Hello, Mage fans. This is Adam. This episode was recorded in July 2024, before Terry's passing. It appears to have been forgotten in the busy recording schedule. I edited the audio tracks and placed them together. I want to thank Josh, Heath, and Pooka for recovering this from Terry's computer. Hello, Mage fans, and welcome to Mage the podcast that works hard towards Ascension so you don't have to. I'm your host, Adam. I'm joined by co-host Terry. You know, for years, Mage fans have asked, what is the difference between mages and hedge wizards? One joins secret factions that battle for power, risks insanity, and masters powerful magic. The other learns sphere magic. Today we're going to talk about the wizards that got left out of the Mage 20 rulebook. But before we do, Terry, any announcements for us?
I guess the only thing is that the next few episodes after this in the ever-complicated timeline of Mage the Podcast is that you and I may do a Reality Deviants book club on the King in Yellow, or the Yellow King, I can never remember which it is, and someone else is going to come in for Lore of the Traditions because I did a bunch of writing on that one. And I'm excited to sit in a slightly different chair. I will probably replace it with a folding chair or something to get myself in the appropriate headspace.
All right, well, today we are looking at Sorcerer, which is a new version of Sorcerer, which in its turn was a new write-up of Sorcerer. And over the years, these books have been given, I guess you could say, nicknames or secondary names. There's World of Darkness Sorcerer, there's Sorcerer Revised. Today we're looking at Mage 20 Sorcerer. That was put out in 2022. There were 5 authors working on that, clocked in at 111 pages. Terry, I think it's time for a walkthrough.
I'd be glad to. I did have 3 alternate titles. One, Sorcerer. We included all the paths, including the stupid ones from World of Darkness Ghost Hunter. Sorcerer, you don't have to put a K in magic for once. And Sorcerer, holy shit, Terry and Adam talked about Sorcerer Revised on January 9th, 2021. Time has no meaning. So I don't think that last one would ever make it into publication. But I'm like, when did I last talk about Sorcerer? It couldn't have been that long. Oh, 2021. I literally wasn't married yet. I didn't have a wife. Like, that's how long ago it was. But yeah, so this has fine cover art. It looks suspiciously like one of the authors drew. It is the same font that was used on Sorcerer Revised, but it just doesn't have the same fill-in, which I thought was kind of interesting as a choice. The interior, the developer, special thanks, references Travis's legendary late-night Denny's Mage sessions. There are a number of storytellers I've run into that have been part of that group, and it's one of those things kind of like PhD advisors that you can kind of like list the storyteller that got you into Mage and the storyteller that got that person into Mage, and how it all comes back to like a single game that was done in Stuart Wick's basement in like 1992 or something like that. We get I also have a consulting developer credit on this one. That is because at the last minute, Travis is like, you can't review your own work, and someone needed to go through the introduction. So Travis is like, look through this and give me any thoughts. And over the course of 4 pages, I think I had 900 notes, and I've never been happier in my life except to double check and to cross-reference weird esoterica for the introduction to a book. And that's when I knew I was a dork. So this book goes in an interesting order. We do have a prelude fiction, but it goes straight into the rules. Normally, we get something that goes groups, character creation, rules. Here it goes Numina, groups, character creation, if you care. The prelude is a story of someone calling upon a ghost, written in I dialect or vernacular speech, which always makes me feel a little bit weird when that is done. That is where you try and write down how someone actually talks. And the book just then starts. Any thoughts on the prelude?
It was emotional, but it was too short to have much content. Yeah. I get no sense of how sorcerers are different from mages or how they work. So punchy, I guess, but a little light on content.
Yes, they did that in this many pages. For listeners at home, I am holding up a single finger indicating the numeral 1. So introduction, sorcerers and seers. Lots of weird things are out there. The shadows in the world of darkness are deep and dangerous. It talks about how you can choose whether or not you want mages and sorcerers as being easy to differentiate or hard to differentiate. And I think either one of those is fine, because as more time goes on, I do really question the how easy would it be to tell these apart? That is, assuming you didn't have something like awareness or prime to directly indicate the difference. The idea being it is hard to tell a difference between a mage who just doesn't have a particular ability due to spheres and so on, or a sorcerer who does. So I'm glad it kind of gives both of those. It tells us that all factions in the Ascension War recognize sorcerers with the technocracy, and Order of Hermes viewing them as lesser but useful, and other groups viewing them as equal but different. Many hedge wizards focus on solitary practice. That is a thing that I wish we had gotten more information. This book doesn't have a storytelling chapter to it, and I kind of wish it did. We learn that psychics have their powers as an extension of themselves, which is empowering and horrifying, and they tend to be subjects of interest for other factions in the World of Darkness. Specifically states that unless you change it, magic users can easily spot the difference between sorcery and hedge magic and true magic. Most groups, though, involved in the World of Darkness aren't quite sure what's going on, so kind of keep that in your back of your head. Most groups aren't necessarily going to know what a sorcerer or a psychic is, or just assume it is some weird variant of something that exists within their group. We get a notion that you should use the optional rule for thresholds if difficulty goes above 9, and then it just kind of starts. Any thoughts on the introduction, Adam?
Well, not surprisingly, this book follows Sorcerer Revised with hedge magic and psychic powers in one book, also hedge wizards in every mage faction. Mage 20 follows Revised Edition in most things. Ascension's Right Hand had hedge magic with psychic powers, but that book included true faith and special advantages, along with a focus on companions for mages. Nice to see the terms hedge magic and hedge wizard again. A good terminology helps mage fans discuss the game. Page 7 had a quote that, for me, jumped off the page. Each affiliation is a secret society in its own right. Dismissing them as lesser traditions is both folly and gross oversimplification, end quote. But on the previous page, you told us sphere magic is superior. Which is it? We shouldn't call less powerful groups less powerful? I'm wondering about that one. There's a sidebar. Nice to see mages can again tell the difference between themselves and hedge wizards. It sort of explained that by saying, well, you see, in Revised Edition, the more experienced mages were off on their own or gone, and so the less experienced mages had a hard time telling. Now there's a more general mix of experienced and newbie mages, and once again, they can tell the difference. So this introduction is short and to the point. I appreciate that. I'm ready for Chapter 1.
Chapter 1 is entitled Hedge Magic. We get a overview that paths have two parts: spells which are narrow and specific but generally easier to do, and rituals which are a bit more freeform. It notes that other books introduce different types of hedge magic, such as Hunters Hunted, Kinfolk, and Ghost Hunters, and that the paths listed below may differ. Generally, this book gives a little bit more flexibility in their usage. It starts with kind of a core overview of how a path is going to work. You start by associating an attribute with a type of magic that you want to do. They can vary. You get to pick. Your path rank can't go above your ability rank. So if you have fascination, for instance, tied to charisma, your fascination rating can't go above your level of charisma. We get a specific thing that mages can't learn hedge magic, and once they awaken, they lose that hedge magic. And again, I'm perfectly fine with that. The avatar kind of gets in the way. Another keynote that makes this kind of magic different from true magic is that before you start, you have to stipulate all of the aspects of it. This could be things like the area it's going to affect, the distance you want an effect to go, how much damage it's going to do, the number of people you're going to bring along, and you specify the number of successes that you're going to shoot for, and you either fail or you keep rolling until you get that, or botch. So unlike true magic, where you can just roll and kind of stop at any point if you're trying to do damage or move a certain amount of material or something, there is no real partial success for hedge magic. We get some more information on rituals that they allow you to act as if your path were 1 dot higher. You get your path rating and additional successes, and you can go beyond what is strictly provided. It also gives you the ability to do a ritual to store a spell for later. We get the idea that you can counter or unweave magic, and that you can unweave other types of magic within the world by having the appropriate lore or reality deviant data knowledge and then spending some additional XP. So you would have the ability to stop vampire magic by having an appropriate vampire tied ability. The more spells you try and store for use later, the higher your difficulty goes. And we get a system for sleepers or sleeper witnesses that subtracts successes instead of increasing difficulty, which I liked. We get an aside on mages kind of creating a pipeline of new forms of magic. So while they themselves cannot practice it, they do have the ability to generate a new path for others to use. We get additional options for teamwork, which breaks it down into 1, the leader could do the effect on their own, 2, the group shares a practice, but they want to have the ability to have everyone work together, and then a third one where everyone is kind of has their own different approach, but can be used as competent assistants. You get the ability to create new paths by conceptualizing it slowly. You create new spells until you gain mastery and cement it, and then spend a permanent point of willpower to kind of fix it into reality, which is interesting because now, since you need the attribute to match that a new path can only be created by someone who has at least 5 dots in one attribute. And with that, we get the actual paths and rituals, and there are a lot of them. There's about a little over 20 by my count, and it includes everything that's really ever been published across more or less any book, plus the Path of Illusion. So as it goes through, it gives you a whole bunch of sample rituals. It gives you what the appropriate spells are. And I'm just going to bang out a high-level one for each. Alchemy allows you to create one-time use items that are ingested, or one-time transformations, require specialized equipment, can increase attributes or mimic supernatural abilities, which threw me off because it says there was one time, but you can create a blade that never needs sharpening. I guess the one-time effect is creating the metal or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. Conjuration makes things appear, can play it off as stage magic, can be used to make attacks, and can pull someone out of a tricky situation. Conveyance is quick travel. You get somewhere quickly. Divination predicts the future. Spells and rituals are the same. It just depends on the speed at which you want to do it. It recognizes that divination is hard to adjudicate, and actually for people in mage games, I would point them at this, because frequently I hear stories of storytellers being like, hey, time 2 correspondence 2, I can no longer have a mystery because my players have access to everything. And I'm like, it's a little bit more complicated than that. I'll probably do an episode on that specifically at some point. But here it talks about how you need to spend successes for how far away in time it was, how accurate you want it to be, and kind of the nature of what you're looking at. But again, I think this is great starter rules, even if you're just using regular mage. We get the Path of Ephemera, which seeks to negotiate relationships of greater familiarity with spirits. It gives us rules on chiminage, as well as visiting the realms of spirits via astral projection. Enchantment has no spells, only rituals, and you make things like artifacts. It's tied to a craft. We get this eerie-ass illustration on page 26 where something just feels wrong, where there's an interior angle that looks like an exterior angle. I don't think that was intentional, but that always stuck out to me. Fascination is a path that makes someone socially compelling. It allows you to be alluring and bend other people to your will, and determines how much you can move sentiment. Fate, you can make something happen. Healing, you can heal things. Healing says it's 2 dice per level, but bashing is 1 level per success, and I'm not quite sure how those two interface. Hellfire, you can light things on fire or something suitably appropriate. It's the path of direct damage, kind of. You get to choose the nature of what that is. The Path of Illusion is just what it says, the ability to generate illusion. Maelstrom is the ability to pull storms from the underworld and to render portions of the Shadowlands uninhabitable. Necromancy is ghost binding. Necronics is the ability to manipulate the shroud and the energies of the dead. Neuromancy allows you to control and send dreams. Quintessence manipulations allows you to drag and stop the flow of quintessence, as well as to pull it into yourself to improve your effects. The Path of Shadows allows you to create and manipulate potentially omnipresent shadows. Its aspect is Shadow Grip, which is the severity and persistence of controlling those shadows. We get Shapeshifting, which allows you to change your scale and possibly combine different aspects of different creatures, which I thought was cool. The Path of Starlight, which allows you to navigate the Shadowlands and find entryways. The Path of Summoning, Warding, and Binding. Again, the ability to command spirits. And finally, Weather Control, which allows you to control the weather. I thought in general these were straightforward. The aspect system has you pick all of the parts of an effect that you would need to ahead of time. Sometimes the rule wording was a little bit confusing to me. So for instance, it started out by saying that, like, hey, anytime you use one of these, you have to spend a point of willpower. And then some of the rituals said that you had to spend a point of willpower within their text. I wasn't sure if that was an additional point or if rituals were free. But otherwise, it was weird seeing very clearly laid out rules for Mage. It's just not something I'm used to in M20. It tends to be wordier or vaguer. This was actually almost in a weird, uncomfortable part where you expected the writing to be even more technical, like you were playing a different game that tended to focus on numbers and bits and aspects and so on. But at the end of the day, this is Mage, and we don't always get that. What did you think of the path-filled Chapter 1, Adam?
Chapter 1 was big. I was trying to keep my notes short, but I'm not sure I can accomplish that. Like mages in Mage 20, hedge wizards are restricted by their skill levels. Using the lists of practices from Mage 20 rulebooks is not for me. That level of complexity and conformity is not what I'm after. Using one attribute for all path magic is probably meant to counterbalance other restrictions, but it takes the fun out of the storyteller system for me. Allowing players to choose a practice and its skill encourages or could encourage min-maxing. Just like the focus rules in Mage 20, this encourages arguments at the game table. What's to stop a player from choosing the same practice and skill for everything? Previous editions systems seems like they had something going for them. Aspects are new for Mage 20. They make the rules a lot more complicated, but it's the same sort of thing Mage 20 did for mages. As much as I may dislike it, it does fit for the Mage 20 edition. I'm sure there are people saying, it's so simple. Complex rule sets are usually promoted that way. I think rules that are actually simple should be called simple. I'm glad we read Land of 8 Million Dreams before this book because it gave me a preview. I didn't see aspects for what color the hedge wizard is wearing or what compass direction in relation to the target, but hey, maybe those are going to be in the errata for this book. In this chapter, aspects are confused with path descriptions in a few places. When a spell is cast, the player can strengthen the spell by how far up the aspect list they want to go, but path description limits what can be done based on the path level the wizard has attained. It seems strange that for in a few spots these seem to be kind of mixed up. There's a path, and I start reading about it, and there's one aspect for just that path, and I start reading through it. It's like, wait a minute, this is the level limits for what you can do at different levels. This is odd. As for layout, all aspects that are not specific to a path should have been on a 2-page spread. Having 3 aspects and a level of range on the other side of the page is maddening. I keep hearing after 30 years of making RPG books, we've gotten better at it. I want to believe that. I don't always see perfect examples of that. People need to look at OSR books like Old School Essentials. The OSR guys have layout licked. The store spell ritual looks good, but what's to stop a wizard from making 200 stored spells between game sessions? Players will be asking, how many marbles can I fit in my pockets? That's how many stored spells I've got. So I think storytellers are going to have to keep that in mind. Counter magic against sphere magic being easier than against blood magic, vampire magic, or werewolf gifts doesn't make sense to me. I think blood magic is closer to hedge magic than sphere magic is. It looks like the authors were more concerned with notions of equality than with the World of Darkness setting. Looks like 5 new paths, 4 focus on low umbra, making a firmer connection with Wraith. It makes sense to give this book dual purpose as a World of Darkness resource. However, I'm not sure hedge magic should have the power to get through the shroud for much more than calling Wraiths. It's nice that Divination added videomancy. You watch a video recorded in the future for you. I don't know who records it, but it probably isn't cheap. Maelstrom's is very odd. Level 1 hedge magic can pierce the shroud to the Shadowlands in a crowded place during the day, if I understand that correctly. This is new and plays a little fast and loose with the World of Darkness setting. I'm not sure I'm going to get behind this. Necromancy 3 can pull a wraith through the shroud and give him a physical body, or her. It seems awfully powerful. Botches can take the player out of the game for a month of game time. Because of what this path would do to a game, I would have to think about this carefully before working it into my game. Necronics is very appealing. A nice way to fight ghosts. It would work great for the pinball wizards from Quick and the Dead, so hats off for that one. Oneromancy, basically dream magic as a hedge wizard path, shouldn't allow manipulating dreams at level 2. Invade Domain ritual should be level 5, I think. And how do hedge wizards ever discover the existence of domains? Domains is a background that was added, I'm pretty sure, in Revised Edition, where a mage can make sort of a mini Horizon realm that is like a mental space, you could say, in his own head, but it has connection to dream realms that the mage can take advantage of. It seemed like very mage level stuff, and here we have hedge wizards who are invading domains. I just need a little help seeing how this picture fits together, because it looks like hedge path magic is getting awfully strong, awfully quick. I think the shadows path should be weaker if the target knows what it is and that it is being used. It seems to have some real psychological edge to freaking people out. But if you're working against a hedge wizard who knows there's a path called shadows, it seems like things ought to be different. Starlight seems incomplete. I'm guessing I need to read Wraith 20 to understand who uses this path and when. It seems like a fragment of a game that isn't a part of Mage 20. It certainly makes visiting the Low Umbra and operating effectively there a lot easier than it has been in past editions of Mage. So sorry I had to dump so much on you, but that was one big chapter, and I guess you could say I had a lot of thoughts. Not guaranteed they're all good ones, but that's what occurred to me. So Terry, let's look at chapter 2.
Just a note, you do suffer +1 difficulty on every roll for each 2 spells you have hanging, and that kind of acts as an upper limit, unless you were talking about some other way to suspend a spell.
I wasn't talking about hanging spells. I was talking about the ritual to put a spell into an object.
Okay, I got the impression that that was the same as hanging a spell. Okay.
It would have been nice if they had explained that to me. I thought they were different things.
So that answers both questions at once. The next chapter is Chapter 2, Psychic Phenomenon. And from the people who brought you 21 paths, we have a bunch of what are referred to as phenomena. Psychic phenomena are innate versus a hedge wizard who learns their magic. Their abilities are capped at half your willpower rounded down, and you're almost always rolling willpower against the difficulty of the level of the phenomenon +3. New phenomena should be tied into some sort of experience that the character has. So the first one is creatively named Animal Psychics, which allows you to think at and command animals. We have Anti-Psychics, which you can't learn other phenomenon. It is hard to know that you have it. You can learn other noumena, and the number of dots you have determines how distant and how hard it is for someone to overcome your kind of anti-psychic shield. You have the ability to negate other powers. Astral projection is the ability to visit the astral. The more points you have, the further you can go, and the longer you can be there for. The suggestion here, to me, is that you can move very quickly in the astral, covering thousands of miles in a few hours. I don't know if that's what it's supposed to imply or if you're supposed to have other methods of going faster, but it finally kind of answers the question of how quickly you can go while astral projecting, and the answer seems to be very, very fast. Biocontrol is control over the self. It allows you to do things from stopping yourself from bleeding to not needing to breathe and stopping the effects of poison. Channeling allows you to pull on the powers of the dead. You can borrow their abilities and knowledge and even channel from multiple ghosts at once. Clairvoyance is the ability to sense distant places. As dots increases, you do so with more clarity and at greater distance. Cyberkinesis allows you to control technology, potentially even technomantic wonders. You can log into equipment remotely, turn it on and off, and blow it up if necessary. We call that the cloud strike phenomena. Cyberpathy allows you to decrypt and interpret things going through the technology. For 1 willpower, you get to become the world's longest USB or Ethernet cable. So again, wish fulfillment. Ectoplasmic generation allows you to gather and collect ectoplasm, the neutral liquid gas thing of which ghosts are made. The more dots you have, the more refined your control over that. Mind Shield is like anti-psychic, but just for yourself and more powerful, and you can use it with other phenomenon. You gain control and can block some, but not other effects as you increase. Can also apply to other mind powers. Precognition, range of powers from danger sense to see into the future, to see into multiple futures. Again, I think this is a great framework to use if you're not quite sure how you should adjudicate the time sphere sometimes. Psychic healing, you can heal harm. At higher levels, you improve your diagnostic ability and severity of the maladies that you have the ability to heal. Psychic hypnosis is the ability to suggest things to other people. At lower levels, you also gain the ability to remember things gooder. Psychic invisibility allows you to avoid notice. Animals and other means of detection will still pick up on you. Higher levels give you more activities where you're not noticed, and even retroactively aren't remembered. Psychic vampirism is pretty powerful in that low levels allow you to pull willpower from other people and eventually heal bashing damage, as well as pull from them at a distance. We get rules for sucking power from vampires, which is apparently kind of fun, but they don't really appreciate it. We have Psychokinetics, which is the ability to manipulate and move objects, gain effective strength based on dots, and you can throw things. I feel like it should also provide an athletics level along with the physical attribute level tied to it, but that's just me. Psychometry allows you to detect events and feelings associated with an object. As the rating increases, the detail grows, and you can kind of travel back through and find out more about the person that manipulated the object. Psychoportation allows you to teleport yourself. At higher levels, you can do so over greater distance and without necessarily needing to know your location that you're trying to teleport into. Pyrokinesis grants control over flame, but no resistance to it. At higher levels, your flame becomes harder to put out, easier to control, and more damaging. The phenomenon of shadow allows you to control shadow and darkness, which includes wrapping people in it. As it increases, ability to notice things gets harder, and the eerie feeling of being wrapped in darkness becomes more pronounced. The phenomena of synergy allows psychics to work together. You have the ability to sense other psychics, to lend your willpower, and higher levels you can create powers. For a high action game, I would just kind of give this to people. And finally, the phenomenon of telepathy, which allows you to read minds, sense thoughts, communicate, and implant ideas. So again, that was a bucket of powers. A lot of them are pretty interesting. A lot of them are pretty lame. All of them cost 1 willpower. Thank goodness in M20 you kind of get 1 point back a day. Otherwise, this would be a pretty rare thing that you would be able to spend points on. I thought these were generally a little bit more straightforward than the magic portion of things. I just wish there were a storyteller section that gave me more ideas of how to use these in games. What did you think about Chapter 2?
The first page suggests origins of psychic powers. I would not ignore that. Having one or more origins of psychic powers makes psychic characters more interesting. Perhaps the descendants of Atlantis can't do synergy with or get disrupted by the psychics created by a technocracy project from the early 20th century that the technocrats are now denying. These origins also help you form factions for the psychics. Published material on psychic factions is very thin. I would take out psychoportation and shadow. They seem to imitate hedge magic too closely. Psychoportation is psychic phenomena to actually teleport just with the power of your mind. I totally get why that's in here. Being I guess a fan of Japanese stuff, there has been so much Esper stories in anime and manga where they just concentrate and they suddenly blip to somewhere else. So I totally get why people would want to put that in their games. I'm not, casting aspersions on that. It just seems a bit strong for me, and so I would really think twice about that. It says anti-psychics can't learn other psychic powers, but couldn't they learn synergy and team up? Seems like the technocracy would encourage that. Because these powers work on a willpower dice pool, and several have less appealing abilities over level 3, I think players are encouraged to sample several of them, and nothing wrong with that, just interesting. The notion that many psychics don't want their powers does make sense. I can picture a person with pyrokinesis who doesn't hate anyone. His power may have some uses day to day, but accidental misfires are a real problem. Now he gets approached by people who want him to burn their enemies so they can make the world a better place. Does that sound like a group you want to join? The offers of the technocracy to turn off their powers may sound appealing. Stories to rescue psychics who took the technocracy's offer and then got treated badly sound like a possible thing in the world of Mage. Well, I'm seizing the reins for Chapter 3. This chapter is mostly factions, and I can't get enough of that. I was going to divide the hosts of Mage the podcast into warring factions, but the producer said no. We start with a section on covens. A coven is a small group of hedge wizards or psychics about the size of a cabal among mages. The difference is covens are rarely part of anything larger. There are also a lot of loners who are afraid to trust others, wish to avoid entanglements, or just never meet others of their kind. The bulk of this chapter is the Affiliations. The first Sorcerer book called Hedge Wizards Groups Societies. Sorcerer Revised called them Orders, while Psychic Groups were organizations. Mage 20 Sorcerer lumps all types together and calls them Affiliations. If you call them hootenannies or shindigs in your games, I won't complain. What's interesting is the affiliations in this book don't have any purely psychic groups, but include groups like the Arcanum and U.S. government agencies along with the Hedge wizards. This makes the Arcanum and FBI look like groups that focus on recruiting and training people with noumena when that isn't necessarily the case. Almost all the affiliations have been covered in past episodes of our show, so I'm going to try to keep it brief. The Ancient Order of the Aeon Rites practices carefully studied and ordered rituals that would be familiar to those who know of Hermetic practices. They started in World of Darkness Sorcerer. Here we're told the current generation of members who are assuming leadership are questioning the wisdom of their predecessors. The Arcanum is a society of scholars and investigators who search for the truth behind the supernatural. They are not secretly manipulated by a non-Egyptian mummy. I don't know where these ridiculous rumors come from. They started in the first Hunters Hunted book from 1992. We have an episode devoted to them. The Balamob changed their name to the Balamoab. They are shamans following Mayan traditions and are mostly in Mexico. This description tastefully avoids the details of their practices. They started in World of Darkness Sorcerer. The Children of Osiris were a minor group of vampires in Vampires First Edition. In Sorcerer Revised, they became a hedge wizard group who used to work with vampires, but the vampires disappeared. This book gives us a different version of the life of Osiris the vampire, but this isn't the first variation we've seen. These hedge wizards learn ancient Egyptian magic and revere Osiris, who they believe governs in the underworld. Cults dedicated to the Egyptian goddess Isis have existed in different forms since antiquity. The cult of Isis mentioned here started in 2010 in the World of Darkness in Egypt. They focus on healing those in need. Other cults to Isis still exist, though. They started in Sorcerer Revised. The cult of Mercury developed its traditions in ancient Rome. The current incarnation maintains large rituals that need at least 50 people. The image of Mercury changes across the globe, so the paths favored may vary. The need for many participants does not vary, so the rules allow them more rituals but no magic on the fly. They started in Sorcerer Revised. The dozen priests of the Pythian order maintain a temple on a tiny Greek island. Their magic involves numerology, astrology, and mathematics that has been used to create amazing poetry. They started in World of Darkness Sorcerer, where they had 6 members. Now they're down to 4. They're having a rough time. If you meet a Pythian magician, be nice to him. The Fenian are a family from Celtic lands with fey blood. Their power comes from geisha, I believe is the pronunciation, forbidden actions that players choose themselves. There are few remaining today. The 3 favored paths are all affinity paths, but learning other paths is more expensive. They started in World of Darkness Sorcerer. Forn Yaf Nacer, I'm hoping I can pronounce that correctly. There are some characters I'm not used to seeing. This is a new affiliation. They practice traditional Nordic magic and focus on combating other Nordic mystic societies that have the wrong values. So far, that has meant preventing the rise of Asatru Futhark, which is good. But if it leads to suppressing other groups that have quote-unquote wrong values, that could be bad. I'm always wary of groups that know they have the right take on a particular culture and hunt down those who don't. They spread to the U.S. in 2019. They sometimes cooperate with the Verbena and Disparate Alliance. Maison Liban started as Hermetics in House Tremere. When the clan became vampires, some escaped to northern France, where they mixed the Gothic language into their magic. They value secrecy and subtlety to this day. They started in Sorcerer Revised. Mogen Halev used to be called Mogen HaKav. They are Jewish men over 40 who seek out the 36 righteous ones and protect them. Now they cooperate with covens of female Jewish mystics who are not actual members of Mogen Halev. They started in World of Darkness Sorcerer. Nebu Afef, the Order of the Golden Fly, started in ancient Egypt by soldiers who wanted to punish the escaping Hebrew people. Today they are dangerous sorcerers trying to eliminate Jewish people with powers taught by a fallen angel. They are meant to be NPC villains. They started in Sorcerer Revised. The Nephite priesthood are traditional Mormon mystics. They serve the Mormon church, even though the church doesn't know of them. In Sorcerer Revised, the priesthood was reduced to 1 member. Now we learn the member has rebuilt the group. They started in World of Darkness Sorcerer. The Seven Thunders are a group of extremist Christians who believe they are preparing the way for an impending Armageddon. Among their targets are vampires, werewolves, and evil wizards, so perhaps they aren't all bad? They started in World of Darkness Sorcerer. The Silver Portal is the most informal affiliation of all. They alter their minds to receive arcane knowledge with mirrors and mystic symbols. When they dream, they gain new knowledge of hedge magic to use in the dream world that they sometimes bring back to the waking world. They started in World of Darkness Sorcerer. The Society of Enlightened Altruistic Ideologies are extraordinary citizens working for the technocracy. They know mages are real and look for the opportunity to take the avatar from a mage so they can use it. They aren't really sure how that works, but they won't let that stop them. They started in Technocracy Reloaded. A Star Council is a group of scientifically minded psychics who believe their powers result from alien DNA. They try to gain the secrets of extraterrestrial life from the government. They started in Sorcerer Revised. Thalhun are a group of techno-wizards who believe an ancient alien race taught them their harmonic science. They were kicked out of the Star Council, but that hasn't dimmed their enthusiasm to bring the aliens to Earth. They started in World of Darkness Sorcerer. U.S. intelligence agencies employ psychics and sometimes techno-wizards along with their highly trained agents. These supernatural factions that manipulate the intelligence agencies make sure they don't get too good at detecting them. They started in the first Hunters Hunted book from 1992. We have an episode devoted to them. Uzoma are traditional African mages and recruit from their own ethnic groups. They commune with the spirits of their homeland and watch over their people. They started in World of Darkness Sorcerer. Those are the 20 affiliations. Nice to see several groups that haven't appeared since World of Darkness Sorcerer. The rest of the chapter tells us about the Hedge Wizards and Psychic who join the Council of Nine, the Disparates, and the Technocracy. Council of Nine first. A psychic or hedge wizard in the traditions would not be an acolyte, but a consort. Consors are more talented, non-mage employees who usually have more rights and privileges. Not all consors possess noumena. When tradition mages go looking for mages to recruit, they keep their eyes open for potential consors. It mentions how virtual adepts look for techno-hedge wizards, but it makes no mention of trying to recruit unhappy, extraordinary citizens away from the technocracy. Dream speakers and verbena have tight relationships with their communities of fellow believers and often treat their consors as equals. We learn many hedge wizards don't find mages' talk of changing the world appealing and turn to hedge wizard groups or private practice as a result. There are also some who leave the traditions after being treated as lesser workers of magic, which they are, but I guess we're not supposed to notice that. Although tradition mages desire psychic consorts, there are few in the traditions because most of them don't find useful training or just want to avoid using their powers. We turn now to the Disparate Alliance and get an update on the Mage 20 setting. The Disparate Alliance is still a secret. They work to undermine the technocracy and to a lesser extent, the traditions too. They're trying to undermine everybody. Real sweethearts, aren't they? The disparate groups help psychics and hedge wizards who are a part of their ethnic or religious group. They are more likely to treat non-mages well because they're more open-minded than tradition mages. I'm not sure what makes them more open-minded, but the Mage 20 books take that position. A sidebar mentions the meta-plot item about the Hollow Ones betraying the traditions to the technocracy. If it happened and is known, the Hollow Ones will keep a low profile and won't reveal themselves so much to hedge wizards. A brief write-up for each group in the Disparates mentions how they interact with those who have noumena. I thought it was cool to see that Ali Batin value psychics with synergy because it meshes with their beliefs. That makes sense. Several of these write-ups describe the craft, which is weird since they're described better in the Mage 20 rulebook. It mentions a few crafts don't recognize the difference between hedge magic and sphere magic. Now that the crafts are in the Disparate Alliance and active participants in the Ascension War, how do they not know this? A mage who can't make that distinction after mixing with other mages just looks odd to me. As expected, when considering paradigms, extraordinary citizens who can employ techno-hedge wizard paths are treated well in the technocracy and given plenty to do. These hedge wizards, to use the game term, are less likely to understand that they are hedge wizards. They can often use their talents to reach higher rank, but not as high as awakened technocrats. Psychics are valued by the technocracy and eagerly sought out. In the first two editions of Mage, the technocracy wanted to reduce magic, psychic talents, and other strangeness in order to make the world more orderly and predictable. Mage 20 doesn't seem to address this. Anti-psychics are valued above all other psychics. They are called scramblers and sent to do fieldwork. It would be an interesting job, to say the least. I get paid that much just to show up? I don't even have to do anything? Oh, avoid getting shot or kidnapped. Okay, for pay that high, I'll wear a Kevlar vest and sit in the back. A sidebar tells us extraordinary citizens can use technocracy backgrounds and equipment. Well, that's chapter 3 for you. Terry, what did you think of the material here?
The thing about the scramblers reminds me of the flavor text for the magic card Null Rod, where it's two characters going, but it doesn't do anything, and the other one going, no, it does nothing. and maybe and someone being like, "You don't do anything." I'm like, "No, I do nothing." This was an interesting thing because again, it's the all of it. It's weird to me because the Arcanum says Order of the Rising Sun as opposed to Golden Dawn. We get very little information about them, the Arcanum otherwise. There's a new interpretation as part of Hunter 5th edition where they're academic dilettantes just trying to one-up each other. So if you're looking for more information on where they could go, that's available. We get a few spelling and translation shifts like the Balamoab and Mogan Halev. I find it interesting that the Children of Osiris here indicate that Osiris was torn up into 14 pieces, where in other places it's 13. They all shave their heads. It drops mention to the vampire priests leading them. I find it interesting that the Cult of Isis makes no mention to the Cult of Osiris. Cult of Mercury seems like big fun drinking club. Great. The Dozen Priests of the Pythian Order, they skipped out on the part where they memorized everything, where they're like, there are few remaining texts. I'm like, I thought their whole thing was that they thought that writing made people lazy. Sure, we have a new Nazi stopping group. Great. This book made weird choices in terms of like capitalization and italicizing things. Like in the Mogan Halev section, Kippa is italicized, the type of headwear. And normally when we see an italicized thing like that, it is like a special game term. And I was like waiting for rules for how to use a kippa in games because of that. And in other cases, like with Mason Liban, Pater and Mater are in bold for I'm not sure why. So there are these weird inconsistencies. The Nephi priesthood, Dust Prophets, still the coolest title of any group within the World of Darkness, in my opinion. I would have loved more information on the effort to rebuild, where it's one guy being like, I don't want to talk about the past. You all died. All but one of you died. There was one survivor. People make jokes about leaving one survivor. This is the one time where that happened. Give us more information. Anyway. In the Seven Thunders section, it hurt to see the word judgment spelled with an E, but I guess that's my American bias. I like that to get into the Silver Portal, you have to fascinate someone. So a lot of esoteric weirdos, in my opinion, in that group, and I'm here for it. It specifically mentions for the Star Council that it's generation spanning, so I like that the Star Council is now something a family can do together. The other thing was, I almost made this my quote for the episode, but under the Thalhun section, it mentions the phrase 5 years with his 7 students, and the 5 and the 7 are in numerals, and it is almost always the case in Onyx Path books that numbers below 10 are spelled out and 10 and above are written as numerals. So that just absolutely jumped out to me. For the other Magical Society sections, this section needed to do a lot more lifting, because to me the importance of a sorcerer to a tradition and the importance of a tradition to a sorcerer is not self-evident. Like, a tradition is a political block about what the nature kind of Ascension is. This kind of leaned more on cultural presumptions, which, again, the degree to which that is important varies between editions and so on, and even within authors within an edition. So, like, to me, it's not obvious what the interface between the two would be. It reinforced the idea that a lot of psychics are talents. A lot of psychic talents are latent and people don't know about it. So I don't know what we're supposed to take from the fact that most people don't know that they're even psychic in the first place. It tells us that the Nagoma are technomagicians or technomancers in some cases. I feel like that's new. If so, cool, awesome. I like that it has a specific note under the Technocracy section that at T2, psychics can have kids. Because in Technocracy Reloaded, we get the idea that basically you have to be in charge of half of a continent before you're allowed to have a kid. In which case, where did new technocrats come from? Anyway, we also specifically had the idea that there was one sorcerer that was a T4 that I think from... I don't know if that was Technocracy Reloaded or Operatives Dossier that had that, but that was one of those weird little bits that Adam and I just like honed in on, like stink on shit. But yeah, it updated the groups. I wish M20 had the ability to have more metaplot. I would have loved more information and more events. In Revised, the sheer amount of stuff that was happening in the affiliations was amazing, and it would have been great to get like a big setting update like that here, but working within
that would have been cool.
Yeah, working within the strictures of what Paradox is allowed to say. But yeah, it was fine. It was fine. It was just the thing we say about every chapter of this book. It's pretty good. It's not bad. So chapter 4 is entitled Tools and Traits, and it walks us through character creation. What is the term of art you use when it's not 753? You have a term you like to use.
A mortal tier?
Yeah, there we go. Thanks. We get information on creating a mortal tier character, which is what sorcerers are in this one, where it's 643, as opposed to when we were talking to Demon Hunter X, where it's like, you're only immortal, which is why you start with 72 ability dots. Yeah. And you have to have a strength of at least 14. And you need an ass tattoo. No ass tattoos in this book. You do get 21 freebie points. Your ability spread is 1174, which is pretty stingy. You get 5 dots of backgrounds, 5 dots of Numina, and some notes that to get additional rituals, you need lower level rituals. Standard character creation stuff. You can get a second type of Numina for all of your freebie points. for a mere 21 points, you can be a psychic sorcerer, or alternatively, a sorceress psychic. I would have loved if they just blew the doors off and like suddenly it was like, here's 4 pages on true faith in M20, and you're just like, what? And you could be like a sorcerer for Jesus, or like a Jewish psychic or something like that. But anyway, weird wish fulfillment. We get a whole bunch of merits and flaws. And they all had a colon after their name. It would be merit, colon, parens, the cost. And it's just like, that's not how punctuation works. Anyway, again, these are the things that get me hung up. Just in case you were worried about whether or not I would be impartial because I was a consulting developer for 3 pages. I'm like, and another thing. You're like, old man yells at cloud, records podcast. We get the merit of psychic awareness, which allows you to roll perception plus occult. I guess this substitutes for awareness. I don't know what the point of this is. It's like, do you want to not have awareness? Do you want to use your existing occult even more? Well, have we got a background for you? We get flow of ki, force of spirit, and strength of psyche. This is a trio of merits that allows you to use quintessence to boost rolls, whether they be physical, social, or mental. And I think that's super fun. I want mages to be able to do that. So detached, it notes that you take no wound penalties. A lot of these merits really assume that you're going to be beaten up and bloody when you're using your powers. It's going to like, you're like, okay, how do I do this but with a gunshot wound? So it allows you to ignore wound penalties, which is interesting because in Mage, you always get to magic with your full arete. You always get to roll both dice. There's Style Sleeper, which means that you act as a sleeper witness for some types of magic, but not others. I didn't like this because, one, the ability to be like, haha, mine is coincidental and yours is vulgar with witnesses, is pretty potent. And two, we get the idea in several books that if a mortal sees enough weird stuff, they're just not a witness anymore. So I would almost want to call this persistent witness, and I would probably make it 4 points as opposed to 2. This is a real big one for me, but I guess it very much varies by game, and that's frequently the point with a lot of merits. Like if you have a lot of vampires in a game, unbondable is pretty badass. If you don't have any, it's a stupid thing and it burns all your freebie points. Twin Link allows you to have Wonder Twin powers, and Path Inept is free points because there's 21 paths. You're not going to get to all of them. Just pick Necronics and be like, nope. Not going to do that. Oh, wait, I have 26 freebie points. Hooray! So then we get to the tool section, and after the way Adam and I talked about this book, I just assumed he and I would be listed here, but no, it turns out it's artifacts. That was a terrible joke. For 1 point, you can get a very good lighter. There's, in the second one that's listed, for whatever reason, the word winter is capitalized. Do we capitalize seasons? Have I been missing that? Or, I don't know. We get the Witch's Bottle, which reduces, if you can get the bodily fluids of somebody who is doing magic against you, you can, and then you bury it on your property, you can reduce the number of successes they have against you by 1. But like, if you can get their bodily fluids, you can probably just kind of deal with them. Like, there's very few scenarios where you're like, well, this guy's causing me problems, but I don't want to kill him, but I do have a jar of his pee. Like, I don't know how that happens in a game. So maybe that's why this is an artifact. You start with a bottle of urine. Like, it's already there. You're like, yeah, I got him incredibly drunk. I got some of the vomit. Here we go. I'm going to have to cut that one. And then we get the 3, 4, and 5 point artifacts, which are all over the place, but a lot of them are pretty BA. The Witch's Steed, for 3 points, you get a flying broom that works at night. And it's like better than Correspondence a bunch of times. And that's the last chapter. There's no appendix. There's no storyteller chapter. It's like, it didn't have time for your stuff. But like, it's 113 pages. It had 21 groups to go through. It had 21 paths to go through. It had 21 phenomena. Those aren't the actual numbers, but 21 seems to pop up an unusual number of times for things. What did you think about chapter 4, Adam?
Well, there are 3 merits that depend on the quintessence manipulation path. That's quite specific. A number of merits appeal to me. Psychic awareness, psi-focus, and others might show up in my games. For artifacts, the Secret Keeper's Journal and Witch's Bottle were interesting and matched the ideas of this book well. A journal that can temporarily or permanently erase sensitive pages, and a bottle hidden on the property that cancels successes of sorcery against a specific person. I thought that was pretty interesting. But yeah, I guess it's now a good point to look at the general points of this book, view it as a whole. What thoughts stood out for you, Terry?
This is the first system-dense M20 book where, like, it's like, yes, there are other things in here, but it's mostly systems. It's largely well executed, gives more detail than most. Again, my frustration is the fact that it is sufficiently thorough that when you don't get an answer to a question, it stands out. And that is frustrating, as opposed to M20 Core, where I just assume that I'm not going to get an answer to a perfectly reasonable game question. So this is the opposite of damning with faint praise. This is praising through criticism. I don't know. I need to come up with a phrase. This book reminded me of how deeply weird Revised was. When you're like, where did this group... Oh, yeah, they were in an ancient war with this zombie mummy who had actually been... was actually St. Peter or something like that. So... that I kind of missed. Some of the powers are going to require adjudication and tries to give guidance where possible. Again, I think the aspect system, it does take a little bit to figure out what it's doing, but once you do, I think it's workable. I look forward to pounding on this at the table at some point. I wish it had playtesters. That's just like not a credit that we get in this book. So the spread of powers is rich and interesting and varied. They are unique and flavorful. The rituals are sometimes very flavorful too. The cladding of paradigm is kind of interesting and may help serve as an on-ramp for someone to play full-on mage as an awakened mage. Kind of wish there was an advanced sorcery section with like resonance and such, but hey, we didn't even have space for a storyteller chapter, so no luck there. If there is an M5, I hope it's at least as good as this. To me, this would be a not unreasonable place to start, somewhere between this and Awakening, especially when you look at what direction the other lines have gone in. But yeah, I think it's a good book for sorcery. It does have everything you need in one. I don't feel compelled to go to a previous edition, but at the same time, if a storyteller were like, nope, we're using the original World of Darkness Sorcerer book, or nope, we're using Sorcerer Revised, that would be fine too. What did you think overall, Adam?
Well, I was thinking of what you said earlier about how it discusses hanging spells in Chapter 1 for Path Magic. And I remember the term hanging spell being defined in another mage book as a spell that is cast and active and lasts a long time. And so I think that might have confused things for me. I think they need to have clear defined game terms for what is a hanging spell. It's a spell that's active and doing things now and it keeps going. And what is a triggered spell? A triggered spell is a spell that has not been activated. It isn't doing anything, but it can start being active when you wake it up or something. Terms like that, it just would lay it out for me and then be consistent over different mage books. That would just help so much. But yeah, thanks for pointing that one point out, because I think the book didn't do a very good job of explaining these two paragraphs that are separated. They're supposed to connect. It's like you could have put them next to each other or told me they connect or something. But anyways, this book is very bare bones. A brief intro says, we got these guys called Hedge Wizards, and then immediately the chapter with Hedge Magic Paths, chapter on psychic powers, a chapter with brief write-ups of factions, chapter on merits and flaws, magic items, and we're done. We don't even get a storyteller chapter. Mage books used to tell us about the world of Mage, how the type of people covered in the book fit into that world. The book is called Sorcerer, but it doesn't technically focus on sorcerers. I think it should have been called M20 Numina or M20 Mortals.
Sorcerers and friends.
Yeah, that's a good one, too.
Yeah.
Why doesn't this book tell us which affiliations are watched by which mage factions? Does the Order of Hermes take an interest in the Order of the Aeon Rites? Did the Verbena place a spy in the Fenian family? What does the Technocracy really think of the Star Council? These groups started in the World of Darkness book, so mages weren't mentioned back in World of Darkness Sorcerer. Now it is a mage book, so we should be hearing this stuff. What I don't like about this book is the new approach to games. The storyteller system was made simple so the storyteller could use a basic grasp of the rules to adjudicate situations. Now the assumption is there is no adjudication. Why do that? The rules cover every detail. Follow them carefully and leave the thinking to the experts. This is a reason why I tend to lean towards the early edition books, but it is a different approach. It's one that works for a lot of people, so I can't say it sucks or I hate it. I just say it's different from how things started out, and it's noticeable to people who've been with the game for some years. But that basically wraps up my thoughts on things. Terry, you often have a quote at the end, so you even mentioned that earlier this episode. Is there anything you've got lined up?
I enjoyed in the teleportation section, which was called Psychoportation, which I assume is called Psychoportation because that's what Dungeons & Dragons called it. And we all love the Complete Psionics Handbook. Universally adored. That book had like 40 playtesters in it, and it's infuriating. It's like, wait, this came out in 1991 and you had 40 playtesters? How did this happen? It had the quote, Psychoportation, also sometimes called teleportation. Everyone would call it teleportation because that's what it does. Psychoportation, also sometimes called teleportation, is a powerful psychic ability to suddenly be elsewhere. I call that dissociating. Or daydreaming, but still. This is one of the more powerful and rare psychic phenomena. The occasional narrow-minded correspondence mage has been put in their place by watching a simple psychic psychoport out of danger's way without earning reality's ire. I love the idea of a character being like, he teleports. He's like, no, I psychoport. Or just... Or like one of those cases where you're like, oh my God, that's a legally distinct kaiju from Godzilla, or something like that, where like for copyright reasons, or like teleportation is actually the brand name. Psychoportation is the generic term. It's not a Kleenex, it's a facial tissue, or something like that. But I just think that this little section had a lot of mage flavor of, no, it's actually a little bit different. Also, you're wrong. Also, there's a word randomly capitalized for no reason. I don't know why mage was capitalized in this section. And I thought that was a real good summary of mage.
Yeah, it's like people arguing about it. It's telekinesis. No, it's psychokinesis. It's like, well, when you break down the original meanings of the two words that were rammed together, they both work. So can we just lighten up?
Yeah. Mindokinesis. No, whatever it is, that's wrong.
Well, if you have something to say, please contact us at magethepodcast@gmail.com with your questions, comments, or feedback. Subscribe to Mage the Podcast on iTunes, Google Play, TuneIn, and other aggregators. If you like the show, others might like it too. And if you leave a review of Mage the Podcast, it makes us more visible in their searches. You can follow us on Twitter at Mage the Podcast. We're also on the web at magethepodcast.com. You can listen to past episodes there and see the complete show notes. We have a YouTube channel now where you can find our episodes. There's a link in the show notes that you can but you can also search YouTube for Mage the Podcast. All lowercase, don't sweat the colon. You'll find us. We're also on Mastodon. The link is in the show notes. This episode was greatly assisted by our executive producers. Terry, can you share their names?
I would be glad to. Special thanks to Oracle Ben Bendelow, Oracle Buck Gregory, Oracle Christopher Phillips, Oracle Guy Stewart, Oracle Jay Widener, Oracle Josh Hillerup, Oracle McHale, Oracle Pooka G, Oracle Sean Gallagher, Oracle The Crew of Erebus, Oracle St. UX Player, Oracle Jason Vines, Oracle Derek Simsick, Archmaster Andrew Edelstein, Archmaster Briar the Blue, Archmaster Dan Svensson, Archmaster Leroy Bryce, Archmaster Morgan Aran, Archmaster Nathan Weaver, Alex, Alexia, Ambiversion, Anders S., Anon, Bedurfy, Berto, Blaze Hibbert, Blake Ryan, Brandon, Bryce Perry, Bubba the Pale One, Chris Blake, Sinchotis, Connor Glosson, Daniel Cuppen, Daniel Scribner, Darren Hennessy, David Roy, Dennis Osborne, Eli Levenger, Eric Schwenk, Friar Rock, George Lar, Gray Trillig H, Henry Kraft, Eobold, Jason Duncan, Jason Kennedy, Jason W. Briggs, Jake Gatsby, Jeff Bryn, Jenna F., Jervis Johnson, John Magnuson, Joel Andes, Lawson Stuff, Kathleen Halperin, Kevin Fitzpatrick, Chris Kinner, Leslie Weatherstone, Manel Canos, Matthew Proyle, Maurice Hopkins, Michael Creedle, Michael Parker, Nibero, Neil Patterson, Nikita Klaminoff, Pax Cal, Patrick McNamara, Patrick Mulder, Rachel Grace, Ricardo, Richard Bat Brewster, Robart the Robot, Ryan Stray, Ryan Kendi, Rob H., Samuel Tobin, Sev Nessus, Starfish, Stephen Carton, Steve Wynyard, Thrice Great, Tyler Bryan, Vincent Hamilton, Walter, William Conley, William Martin, and Wolf Larryson. That list literally goes across 3 pages, and if I take a break, it's because I need to breathe. Thank you all for your support.
Yeah, we certainly do appreciate our executive producers. They make so much possible. If you would like to become an executive producer for Mage the Podcast, it would help us keep bringing you episodes like this one. You would also become a part of our own council to discuss upcoming projects. The link in the show notes will get you started. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Until next time, truth until paradox, baby.
And remember, if you feel like this book takes all the fun out of magic, remember, you could always be playing vampire. Bye.